Hey, welcome everyone in this new video tutorial about the multiplayer combat editor. In this video we're going to view how to create a stat overlay for your game. So the stat overlay is just a window displaying the list of all stats. If we're so in the previous video we implemented the stat interface and manager, and we didn't even try as two players. So if you want to try as two player, you can just click the arrow there, say you want two players, and say you want to play new editor window like this, and you have two players and they both have their stat overlay. So that this video is about creating your own stat overlay like this. So the quickest way to do this is to just go to my example, your examples folder, the one you downloaded from my website. You go to widget, stats, and you can duplicate stat overlay, stat entry, and stat modifier entry into your project. You can do this, but in this and then once you've done that, you can just open up your duplicated version of the stat overlay example, and you can just set up what you want here, and everything and the code is going to work right away. But in this video I'm going to explain how to actually implement the code. So if you go to third person blueprints, you can create a new folder. In there, create a new folder, widgets, and we want to create a new user interface, widget blueprint. No, it's not going to be it, we're going to delete that. We actually want to create a new blueprint class. We want to search for stat overlay like this, and then we want to hit select, and we want to call this widget my stat overlay, for instance, like that. You want to open it up, and you see there is nothing. Fine, we know that there is nothing. I mean, that's normal. So you want to customize your stat overlay here as you wish. So we're just going to grab a canvas panel. We want that to fill our screen, and the stat overlay needs a box. So once you before customizing, before customizing, you want to go to graph, and you want to go to your functions. You want to get the override functions, and you want to type in get, and you want to override get stat container, and get stat entry. No, you don't want to override get stat entry because it's a system getters function, and you want to override all. You only want to override this. So what is this? And how to? So I'm not sure if you properly see what I done. I clicked on override, and in order to bring the contextual menu for searching, I drag and dropped the drop down menu, and then I was able to search for get stat container. Then I clicked it and it gave me this. And in here, what you want to do, you actually want to return the value. In here you want to have a widget in your HUD that corresponds to the class it's asking for. So in this case it's asking for a panel widget, which is a box, which can be a box, for instance. So we will add a box to our screen. Let's say we want a vertical box like this, and we want to call this stat container. We're going to call that vbox stat container, and we want to bring that, let's say, top left. We want that to be that big. and we want to promote that to a variable. And then we want to hit compile, go back to our graph, and drag and drop the variable which appeared, vbox stat container, which is the box we just added, like this. And then we want to hit class defaults, and in there it's asking for a stat entry class. So if I'm hitting play, so I'm going to show you what is the stat entry class. So we just created the stat overlay, which is only the window. The stat entry is just the column, the row containing stamina and the amount of value the stat has. So the stat entry is a widget inside the stat overlay. So we need to create a stat entry for our overlay to use. So we're going to create a new blueprint class. We're going to search for stat entry, and we're going to select that, create one, widget my stat entry. We're going to open that up. We're going to go to graph. We're going to go in our override button. We're going to drag this little drop down menu down. Then we're going to search for get. And we have 3 functions to override. So we need to get the stat, we need to override that function. Then we need to search for the other 2 functions to override. Get stat name text, and then gets modifier container. So the modifier container is just the box wrapping up the 2 other widgets that the stat entry needs to display the stat. And stat name, this is the text displaying the stat name, and this is the text displaying the stat value. So we can go to our designer, and we can say our widget is actually of a custom size. Let's set 300 by 350 by 50, for instance. We're going to create a new horizontal box, which we're going to drag and drop in our hierarchy, like that. Then we're going to need a text and another text. And this is going to be the stat name. And this is going to be the stat value, like this. And we want that to be on the right. So we're just going to click on this. And we're going to click on fill, like that. And we want to hit compile, hit save. Actually, no, we want to rename these widgets and make them variables. So we want that to be called hbox stat entry, for instance. This is going to be called text stat name and text stat value, like that. Then you want to go to you want to promote these 2 variables. You want to go back to your graph. You want to remove the parent nodes, and you want to drag and drop your newly created widgets which appeared in your variables folder. So modifier container is the hbox. Stat name is going to be that, your text stat name widget. Stat value is going to be your stat value widget, like this. And then, oh, so that's not, I'm mistaken. So this is the modifier, so this is the box which is supposed to contain the modifier of your stats. So for instance, if we're hitting play, in here you can see I have 100 stamina, but maybe I have an item that says I have 20 more stamina by default. It's going to create a new row displaying plus 20, and we need to create the box. And in my stat entry blueprint, the modifier container is actually the box containing the modifiers of your stats. And in there I made a mistake. I put the stat entry in the box supposed to contain the modifiers, so that's not it. So we want to add to that a vertical box, which we want to drag and drop to the horizontal box, like this. And we want to call that vbox, modifier box. We want to promote that to a variable. And we actually don't want that to be... We want to drag and drop the vertical box. We actually want to delete the vertical box. We want to cut the horizontal box. Then we want to drag and drop the vertical box. Then we want to right click the vertical box and paste. And like this, we have the possibility to add new rows below the first row in this widget. And we're going to add the modifiers below our stat name. So the main box is going to be called vbox main box. Like that, we're going to hit compile, hit save, go back to our graph, and in our modifier container, we actually want to promote our vbox to a variable, and we want to drag and drop the vertical box into the horizontal box to replace it, like this. And this way the stat entry knows where to add the modifier entries in case we need them, like that. And you also want to create the blueprint class stats modifier entry, which is the widget which is going to display your stats modifiers. So this is going to be called widget my stats modifier entry. We're going to open that up. We're going to go to our graph. We're going to grab our override button, drag and drop the drop down menu, search for get, and we need to override these two functions, get modifier value text, and we also need to override get tag list text. So the tag list is the list of tags associated with the stats modifier. For instance, if you create a modifier that only increases the fire damage you deal, and not all damage, it's going to be written in the stats modifier entry. The tag list is going to read fire, and then modifier value text. This is going to be the amount, the modification amount, the value modified, the amount of value modified by the stat modifier. So we're going to need two texts. So we're going to go to our designer tab, add a new horizontal box. We're going to specify that we want that stat modifier entry to be of size custom, like this. And we want to drag and drop two texts in there, like that. You want that text to be on the right, so you want that to fill. This is going to be +10, for instance, and this is going to be the tag list. We're going to promote both of these texts to variables. We can't promote them both at once, so we're going to do it one by one. And we're going to rename them text mod value. And the first one is going to be text tag lists, like that. We want to go back to our graph. Then we want to remove the parent call of the function, like that. And we want to drag and drop our newly created widgets, the tag list text and the modifier value, like that. And then we want to hit compile, hit save. And then we have a bunch of things to do. So we created our window containing the stats. And we have to tell our window to spawn the stat entry type we created. For that, you need to go to your graph tab of your stats overlay widget. You need to click the class defaults button, which will open a detail panel. In that detail panel, you'll have a matrix to fill, which is the type of stat entry to create. You're going to so you have to click that drop down button, and we're going to select our my stat entry like that. We're going to hit compile. Then we're going to go to our my stat entry blueprint, and we're going to do basically the same thing we just did. Hit the class defaults button and say what is the type of stat modifier we want to create. And what do we want to create? We want to create my stat modifier entry like that. And then we finally need to specify that we want our window to spawn instead of the window we specified in the first video. So we're going to open up our content browser. We're going to go to blueprints, open up third person character, and in our dispatch on initialization stat manager, we are creating the stat overlay in there, and we don't want to create the add stat overlay. We want to create my stat overlay like this. We want to hit compile, hit save, hit play, and then it's not working as intended. And it's not working because I made a mistake when we created our stat entry. So when we said what type of what was the box of the modifier container, we specified it was our main box, and the main box is containing everything, except that in the code, when you have 0 modifier, I'm removing every child widget in the container. And we created our widget in a way where our stat value and stat name is contained in the box which we specified was our modifier container box. So the code was basically removing everything from that box. So we actually need to add a new vertical box to our main box. This is going to be our vbox mod container. This is going to be a variable, and we're going to go to graph, and we're going to drag and drop this into, we're going to go to modifier container function, and we're going to drag and drop our newly created vbox into the other variable like this. We're going to hit compile, hit save, hit play, and then you can see you have your stat overlay. So that's so that's how you create a stat overlay with MCE. So this is going to wrap up the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.